is stupid on its face, for all of the reasons that you can take this argument. It's stupid. Another thing that bothers me about this situation is this atrocity that took place recently in Israel, where monsters came across the border, killed parents, took children, snatched people, put them on motorbikes, uh, took them hostage, where more than 200 people are still being held hostage now, coming across on paragliders with machine guns and indiscriminately shooting people down. As people who think, as people who have some type of common sense, if you find yourself making a statement about that day and you attach the word but to that, you already have a problem. There is no but to these type of things. Again, as I said on a recent short of mine, wild, insane acts of barbarianism and inhumanity can never, ever, ever be justified. You just cannot do it. The logic is flawed. For the love of humanity, is just stupid. So now you want to talk to me about the Nakba, all right, in Arabic, right? The catastrophe or whatever. Everybody has to have a name, right? You have the Shoah, the Holocaust. What do you want to call what happened to my people? Tens of millions of people killed, forced to harvest rubber in the Congo, shipped as a commodity across the Ethiopic Ocean, right, before those who have the money changed it into the Atlantic Ocean, brought to these shores, forced to take the religion of the cross, yeah. Bread to produce thick thighs and a thick backside. It's a better worker, right? What do we call ours? That's another conversation. But it's hypocrisy, right? It's hypocrisy. Number one, well before the Europeans were interested in us, the trans-Saharan slave trade done by the Mohammedans, by the Islamists, a lot of my people wear bow ties. That's a knockoff version. Bean pies and bow ties standing in Atlanta. In Houston, it's 120 degrees outside, and you've got on a three-piece suit and a bow tie selling bean pies, and copies of the final call. Yeah, good luck with that. But it's the Mohammedans who came across the desert, down into Igbo land, down into Sudan, down into North Africa, and below, and the boundary there, which I don't know how much desert it was back in that day or not, but they came into the land, they stole the people, they killed the men indiscriminately, they took the women that they want, and they castrated the boys to be in the harem, right? Most of the boys died. Most of the young men or boys died on their way, being tied wrist to wrist behind a caravan of camels. They died and bled to death in the desert, bled to death in the desert from the castration. Can you imagine that, right? Right? All in the name of a religion. I wish I would bow to that. I wish I would. I'd rather not live before I would bow to that. Miss me with that. Okay, now let's talk about the fact that some adherents, maybe of Judaism, but definitely self-identified Jews, members of the Confederacy, enriched themselves as members of the profiting body of the slave trade. Yes, that is a fact, right? But will you really judge an entire people group based on however many people? And I hear there was a lot. Some of the information I've seen, there's a lot. But would you really judge an entire people group based on that? You sure don't seem to have an issue, Black America, with Islam. You sure don't seem to have an issue with the knockoff version of the Nation of Islam and the bean pies. You don't seem to have an issue with that somehow. It's hypocritical. It's hypocritical. Okay, we got to think. We got to be better. If we're going to dig into the history books and we're going to call people to task, let's not be assholes when we do it. Let's, do it with some type of objectivity and a level view. Lastly, when people are being snatched and taken across the border into Gaza, kicking and screaming, I saw a whole lot of Afro-Palestinians. And for me, again, I spend a lot of time in the region. I have been into what they call the quarter. It's not really a quarter. Let's call it an eighth of the old city, the 16th of the old city, the Afro-Palestinian 16th. And, they look just like me and a lot of people that's watching this video, except they wear way too much cologne than any man should wear. I don't know what it is about that Middle East. There's a certain cologne that a lot of the Arabs wear, and I think they gargle it and they drink it. It's bad. It's loud. It's just like a lot of my Latino brothers here in the States. But the only reason why we're there is because we're the leftovers that were brought there during the trans-Saharan slave trade. I know that these Afro-Palestinians are not allowed to marry the Palestinians' daughters. They do not give their daughters to people who look like me. Yes, it's a caste system within a caste system. We're the doormat there. We're not the head, we're the tail there too. But lo and behold, you hide us in the shadows, okay? You hide us in the shadows. But when it's time to do dirt like they did on that day, I saw so many brothers. I saw so many Afro-Palestinians running out there, putting people on motorbikes and tying them up and subduing people. Everybody uses us. Everybody uses us. All right. So between the Crusaders, between the cross-bearers, and you look at all of the Union Jacks and the different flags for all of these countries that have marched into Africa, all of these European countries that have marched into Africa and stolen us and spoiled us and ripped families apart and done all these things. Yeah, they come in victory and there's a dead white guy nailed to a cross. It's a misrepresentation of Messiah. Definitely it is. But these are the facts. So again, if we're going to go and get all high and mighty and get historical, please, let's do that. Let's get high and mighty. I recommend becoming at least knowledgeable of the situation, becoming knowledgeable of it at the very least, of the region and the history and the whole nine. Is it convoluted? Yeah, a lot of nuance there, But again, as I said in a short, if you've never visited the region, you might want to hold your opinion. If you've never spent significant time, you might want to hold it. If you've never lived there, yeah, we can call evil for what it is. Things that were done in the past by Israel, things done by Israeli settlers that by and large go unpunished. Yes, know about these things. People being forced from their homes during conflict, that's nuanced. You got to look at the whole thing. You got to look at the whole thing and the circumstances and everything surrounded, not saying yay or nay to it. Yeah. So at any rate, all I would say to any party, to the Jews, to the Israelis, I would say to them, Atem yodim she'anachnu tzrichim shalom. Plain and simple. To the Arab, to the Palestinian, I would tell them, shufu sahabi lazim salam. We need peace. We need peace. I don't know what that looks like or how that's ever going to be achieved in a situation to where one group believes that another group never existed, or one group is taught from diapers that the only thing that's ever been there is a Palestinian land. Another group is taught from diapers that these tawny, brownish people are our enemies and they're complete interlopers and they have no right to be here at all. That's wrong too. Those that are taught from diapers, well on their way to wearing all black and all white and praying in front of a wall, believing that everyone is cattle besides them. That's madness. Finally, I'll say this. There is a lack of common sense in real critical thinking when it comes to this whole situation with Israel/Palestine, Palestine/Israel, and the whole nine. We know where the name comes from. Again, don't talk to me about the Balfour Declaration. Don't talk to me about any of these other things until you talk about how the region got the name Palestina. If you don't want to mention that, then you're not honest. You're disingenuous anyway, and you shouldn't talk about history. But the lack of logic and critical thinking, takes place a lot with my people. And I want to put this perspective in front of you. Think about it like this. If you stop and think about the atrocities that have befallen my people here on these shores, okay, in the past. Not to mention today, legislation that is grotesquely, disproportionately pointed at us to harm us, that's still happening today. If you believe that modern acts of terror are justified based on what has happened in the past, how about this? If I go into